The day he saw her fall for the third time. Jonah Carver dropped his reins. It was high noon in Dry Creek, sun blazing like judgment over a crowd that gathered to watch a woman take her beating. Her name was Clara Hollis, the widow of the late Thomas Hollis, a man once rich in land and poor in kindness. The townsfolk said she deserved it, that she'd lied, stolen, even poisoned her own husband. But Jonah saw something else in her eyes as she struggled to stand again, not guilt, not madness, but a kind of fury the world couldn't kill. And when that fury met his, something inside him shifted. By sundown, the same town that threw rocks at her would whisper about the day a wealthy rancher stepped down from his horse, wrapped his coat around a shamed widow, and told the sheriff, "She's mine now." They didn't know he meant it, and they sure as hell didn't know what it would cost them all. Jonah Carver wasn't a man built for company. He ran 200 head of cattle and 3,000 acres of desert grass that baked gold under the sun. The Carver spread was the kind of place where a man could hear his own heartbeat echo in the wind. He liked it that way. He'd buried a wife once, young and pale, taken by fever before she'd learned how to brand a calf. After that, Jonah stopped going into town unless he had to. He'd built fences, not friendships. But Dry Creek had a way of forcing a man's hand. That morning, he'd ridden in for feed and nails, passing the saloon when he heard shouting. At first he thought it was a fight, normal enough in a place like this. Then he saw the crowd, men in dust coats, women in bonnets, kids clutching their mothers' skirts. They'd made a half circle around a figure in the dirt, a woman. She was on her knees, dress torn, blood on her cheek. A man twice her size stood over her with a rope in hand. Sheriff Dugan watched from the edge, thumbs hooked in his belt, doing nothing. Jonah's voice cut through the heat. "Enough." The word hit like a bullet. Every head turned. "Don't get involved, Carver," Dugan said, lazy-like. "Widow Hollis brought this on herself." "She steal something?" Jonah asked. "Respect," one man laughed. The crowd joined in. Jonah swung off his horse, slow and deliberate. The air felt thick, like it was holding its breath. He walked to the woman and offered his hand. She didn't take it. Not at first. She looked up, eyes narrow gray eyes that had seen too much. "Don't," she whispered. "They'll come for you next." Jonah studied her. Dirt on her face, split lip, bruises forming like violet clouds. But under that, pride, pure, stubborn pride. The kind that kept a person alive long after hope had run out. "Ma'am," he said, "let him try." He helped her up. Someone in the crowd spat. Jonah turned toward the sound, gaze hard enough to silence a saloon at midnight. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then without another word he took off his coat and draped it around her shoulders. That was the moment Dry Creek decided to hate them both. Later, when they reached his horse, she tried to pull away. "I can walk," she said. "I didn't ask," Jonah replied. She glared. "Why'd you do that? You don't even know me." He mounted up, offered her a hand again. "Don't need to." Reluctantly she climbed behind him. The ride back to the Carver ranch was long and silent, except for the wind and the faint hitch of her breathing. When they reached the porch, Jonah dismounted and helped her down. "You can stay here tonight," he said. "House is big enough." "I'm not some stray you picked up," she snapped. He half smiled. "Could have fooled me." That earned him a glare sharp enough to cut rope. But she didn't leave. Inside, the house smelled of cedar and quiet. Dust motes danced in the late afternoon light that streamed through small windows. She sat at the edge of the hearth, clutching his coat around her. "You sure you want the trouble that comes with me?" she asked. Jonah poured coffee from the pot on the stove, set a cup near her. "I got plenty of trouble already. What's one more?" That almost made her smile, but it didn't last. "They think I killed him," she said softly. "Thomas, my husband." Jonah leaned on the mantel. "Did you?" She looked up. "No, but I thought about it." Silence stretched between them, the kind that says two people understand more than they're saying. Outside, the wind kicked up, rattling the shutters. Jonah turned toward the door, his jaw set. "They'll come," he said. "Soon as they sober up from their righteous anger. Then I should go," she said, standing. He shook his head. "You're staying. They want you. They'll have to come through me." She stared at him, something unreadable flickering behind her eyes. "Why?" Jonah hesitated, then said, "Because I've seen a town lose its soul before. Don't intend to watch it happen again." By nightfall, lanterns burned low. She'd cleaned her face, tied her hair back. Sitting near the fire, she watched him check his rifle, slow and methodical. "You really mean to fight them?" she asked. "If I have to," she swallowed. "They won't stop with threats." "I know." There was a quiet pause, then she said, almost to herself, "They said I was cursed, that anyone who tried to help me would die." Jonah looked up, eyes steady. "Guess we'll find out." Hours later, he sat awake in the dark, listening. Hoofbeats in the distance, voices, the low hum of anger carried on the wind. He stepped outside, shotgun in hand. As torches flickered down the ridge, a dozen riders, maybe more. Clara appeared behind him, barefoot, pale in the moonlight. "You can still hand me over," she whispered. He didn't answer, just shifted the rifle, eyes fixed on the coming glow. "Jonah," she said, voice trembling. "Why are you doing this?" He glanced at her then, and for the first time she saw something raw in his expression. Not pity, not pride, but recognition. "Because I know what it's like," he said quietly, "to lose everything and still be blamed for surviving." The riders were close now, dust rising like smoke. Jonah stepped forward off the porch. "Stay inside," he said. But Clara didn't move. And when the first torch hit the edge of the property, she whispered, "Then it looks like they'll have to burn us both." The night the mob came, the wind carried their anger. Jonah stood on his porch, shotgun cradled like a promise, while Clara's shadow moved behind him through the thin curtains. Flames from their torches threw long twitching shapes across the desert ground. You could almost taste the heat and hate in the air. Sheriff Dugan rode out front, hat low, voice booming. "Carver, step aside and hand her over. Ain't no sense in dying for a liar and a thief." Jonah didn't answer. He just racked the shotgun once. Sharp, metallic, final. The sound scattered the night like a crack of thunder. Behind him, Clara's voice was steady, though her hands trembled. "You should let them have me." Jonah glanced over his shoulder. "You keep saying that like I'd ever do it." Her jaw tightened. "They'll kill you for me." He looked back toward the torch. "Then they'll learn I don't scare easy." They stood that way for a long breath, two against many. Then a gunshot split the night. It hit the porch post inches from Jonah's head, showering him with splint. The fire answered back, one loud boom from his shotgun, and the lead rider's torch dropped to the dust. The crowd scattered like startled quail. When the smoke cleared, only the sheriff and a few others stayed. Dugan's voice came quieter now, but colder. "You're making a mistake, Carver. That woman ain't what she seems." Jonah lowered the barrel just enough to meet his eyes. "Maybe not, but she ain't yours to hang." The sheriff spat, turned his horse and disappeared into the dark. By dawn the desert was quiet again. Clara hadn't slept. She sat by the window watching the first light touch the sand. Jonah poured coffee and handed her a cup. She took it, eyes distant. "They won't stop," she said. "I know. They think I killed him because it's easier than asking what really happened." Jonah took a seat across from her. "Then tell me." She hesitated, then spoke low, as if afraid the walls might listen. "My husband Thomas, he wasn't the man people thought. He ran this town one way or another, owned the bank, the land, even the law. Folks said he built Dry Creek, but truth is he bought it piece by piece, and the people with it." Jonah nodded. "Heard rumors. Rumors don't do justice to what he was." She looked up, eyes hard now. "He hurt people, Jonah. Hurt. When he died, they didn't mourn him. They mourned their meal ticket, and someone had to pay for it." He studied her face, saw the exhaustion carved deep. "So they chose you. They always choose the one who can't fight back," she whispered. Outside, the desert stretched wide and merciless. Jonah stepped onto the porch, scanning the horizon. Smoke rose faint from town. A burned wagon, maybe. Retaliation, he figured. He'd seen mobs before. Fear made good men stupid, but something about Dry Creek's rage felt too organized, too certain, like they were protecting something. When he went back inside, Clara was gone. He found her an hour later saddling one of his horses. "Where you think you're going?" he asked. She didn't look up. To finish what he started. Jonah stepped closer. "What's that mean?" She cinched the strap tight. "Thomas had a ledger. Names, deals, payoffs. Proof of every man he bought in this town. It's hidden in the old mine north of the river. If I can find it, Maybe I can make them see the truth. Jonah shook his head. You walk into that mine, you won't come back out. They'll be waiting. Then let 'em wait, she said, swinging into the saddle. Jonah's jaw clenched. You're not going alone. She met his eye. You don't owe me this. Maybe not, he said, mounting his own horse. But I hate bullies more than I like peace. They rode through the desert till the sun climbed high. Dust rose behind them like ghosts. By noon they reached the ridge, sharp rock, dry brush, and the black mouth of the abandoned mine. Yawning ahead, Jonah dismounted, scanning for tracks. Somebody's been here, he said. More than one. Clara slid down, drew a deep breath. Then we're close. Inside the air was cool and damp. Their lantern flickered over timbers, slick with age. Water dripped somewhere in the dark. Jonah moved first, rifle raised. You sure about this? Not even a little. They found the ledger in an old crate beneath a broken rail. Dust-covered, bound in cracked leather. Initials TH, burned into the spine. Clara opened it with shaking hands. Inside, names, dates, amounts, even the sheriff's. She looked up. This is it. This could clear me. Jonah frowned. Or get you killed faster. Before she could answer, a voice echoed from the tunnel mouth. Now that, Sheriff Dugan said, stepping into the lantern light, is what I was afraid you'd find. Behind him came 3 men with rifles. Jonah raised his own, but Dugan smiled. Easy now, Carver. No need for blood. Just hand it over. Clara stepped forward, clutching the ledger to her chest. You worked for him, she said. All of you. You think this book dies with me. The sheriff's smile faltered. You don't understand what you're playing with. Jonah's voice was steady. Looks like she understands fine. For a long second, nobody moved. Then Dugan said quietly, You ain't gonna make it out of here. Either of you. Jonah cocked his rifle. Then we'll make it worth the trip. The first shot rang out, deafening in the tunnel. Dust filled the air, lantern swinging wild. Jonah fired back, the flash lighting his face like lightning in a storm. Clara ducked behind a beam, clutching the ledger tight. When the echoes died, 2 men lay still. The sheriff's leg bled where Jonah's shot grazed him. He stumbled back toward the entrance, cursing. Jonah grabbed Clara's hand. Come on! They ran through the mine, footsteps thundering on the boards. Behind them, Dugan's voice shouted, You can't outrun what's coming. That ledger won't save you. It'll burn this town to ash. Jonah didn't look back. Maybe that's what it needs. They burst into daylight, gasping, dust rising around them. Clara clutched the ledger, eyes wide with something between terror and hope. Jonah mounted fast and pulled her up behind him. We ride south, he said. There's a marshal in Silver Bend. He'll know what to do. As they galloped down the ridge, Clara looked back one last time. The mine mouth was filling with smoke, whether from gunfire or something worse she couldn't tell. But she did know this. The truth she carried was heavier than any saddlebag, and the men chasing them would rather bury it than see it told. By nightfall, the desert would rise against them. Riders from Dry Creek were already on their trail, and the sheriff wasn't the only one who had reason to keep the widow's secret buried. But what Jonah didn't yet know, what nobody in the territory did, was that Clara's late husband hadn't died by accident, and his ghost still had claws in the living. They rode hard through the basin, sun hanging low and cruel over the sand. Behind them, a trail of dust followed, thin at first, then thicker. Riders. Jonah didn't have to look to know who they were. Dugan had rallied the rest of his dogs, and they were coming fast. Clara clung to him, the leather ledger pressed tight against her chest. Her voice trembled against his shoulder. How far to Silver Bend? 30 miles, Jonah said. Maybe more if the horses give out. They won't, she said quickly. They can't. He looked back once. A dozen figures, maybe more, cutting across the heatwave. The sight twisted something deep in his gut. Not fear exactly, but an old familiar weight he thought he'd buried years ago. Hold tight, he said. We'll lose 'em through the wash. He veered west, toward a canyon where dry riverbeds cut through red rock like scar. Dust stormed around them as hooves pounded the earth. They reached the first ridge by dusk. The horses were lathered, sides heaving. But Jonah didn't slow until the sound of pursuit faded behind the wind. Only then did he pull up and swing down from the saddle. Clara slid off, legs shaking. She looked around the canyon, narrow, jagged walls rising on either side, a perfect place to hide, or be trapped. Jonah unsaddled the horses and led them under a ledge, where shadow gave some relief from the heat. Clara watched him in silence until she finally said, "You've done this before." He glanced at her. "Done what? Run? Hide? Fight men like that?" Jonah smirked faintly. "Everyone out here's fought men like that. Just depends on how long they last." She crouched beside the small fire he built, eyes lost in the flame. "You said you lost someone. Your wife." He didn't answer right away. The crackle of the fire filled the space between them. "Fever took her, back when the Carver Ranch still meant something to me." Clara's gaze softened. "And after, I learned to live quiet," he said, "to mind my own, till you." She blinked, caught off guard. "You don't even know me." Jonah looked at her over the fire. "I know the kind of woman a town tries to break. They only bother with the ones who still got some fight left." The words hung there, heavy and true. Later that night, when the moon rose silver over the canyon, Clara couldn't sleep. She sat near the horses, the ledger open on her lap. By the faint firelight, she traced the names with her fingertips. Each one was a man she'd seen smile at church, tip his hat at her in town, men who'd sworn loyalty to her husband, and kept their hands dirty with his money. Then she saw a name near the bottom. Her breath caught. "Jonah." He stirred. "What is it?" She turned the book to him. His name was there. Carver, Jonah. Under it, land deed transfer, $5,000 paid in full. Jonah stared, eyes narrowing. "That's a lie, is it?" she whispered. He took the ledger, scanned the line again. "Never took a dime from Thomas Hollis. Only time I dealt with him was when he tried to buy my south pasture. I told him to go to hell." Clara's voice broke. "Then why's your name here?" He looked at her sharply. "You tell me." For a long while neither spoke. The wind howled through the canyon like something alive. Finally, Jonah shut the book, jaw tight. He forged it, probably figured I'd sell after he was gone. Clara frowned. "No, Thomas never forged. He kept proof. Always. It's how he controlled people." Jonah's hands curled into fists. "Then maybe he controlled me too, without me even knowing." Clara stared into the fire. He had a way of making folks owe him, even when they didn't. Jonah stood, pacing the edge of the firelight. "If Dogan finds this ledger, he'll use my name to turn the whole town against me. Hell, they already want my head for protecting you." Clara's eyes glistened. "I'm sorry." He stopped. "Don't be. This ain't your fault. It's his." But deep down, Jonah wasn't sure who his was anymore. Thomas Hollis, the sheriff, or the ghost of his own mistake. Sometime before dawn, thunder rolled low across the basin, not from the sky but from horses. Jonah was on his feet in a heartbeat. "They found us." Clara grabbed the ledger. "How?" "Don't matter." He snuffed the fire with his boot and pulled her toward the horses. "We ride." They took off through the canyon, hooves striking sparks on stone. Shouts echoed behind them, torches flaring against the rock. Gunfire cracked. A bullet tore through Jonah's sleeve, grazing his arm. He gritted his teeth, urged the horse faster. "Hold on." They burst out of the canyon into open desert, wind tearing at their faces. The stars wheeled above like silver fire. Behind them, Dugan's men poured out of the rocks, shooting blind into the dark. Jonah turned in the saddle, fired twice. One rider fell. The others slowed, wary now, but not stopping. Then a shout cut through the chaos. Dugan's voice again. "Jonah Carver, you're fighting on the wrong side of this. That woman's poison. Her husband's death was no accident, and she's got your name to prove it." Jonah fired again, missing. "He's lying," he shouted to Clara. But when he looked at her, she wasn't meeting his eyes. They didn't stop until dawn turned the desert gold again. The horses were near collapse when Jonah finally called halt, near a cluster of dead mesquite trees. Clara slid off, swaying on her feet. He caught her before she fell. "You all right?" She nodded weakly. "I just needed to think." Jonah looked out toward the horizon, where the line of riders was still faint but closing in. "Ain't got much time for thinking." She hesitated, then said quietly, "Jonah, he wasn't lying." He froze. "What?" Clara's voice cracked. "Thomas's death. It wasn't natural. He found out I'd gone to the sheriff with proof of what he'd done. That night, he came at me, drunk, furious. He fell, hit his head on the stove. Jonah stared. "You're telling me you killed him?" Tears glimmered in her eyes. "I didn't mean to, but yes." The air seemed to still. Even the horses stopped moving. Jonah turned away, jaw tight. "And you let me stand in front of that town for you? I didn't ask you to," she cried. "You chose to. I never wanted this, any of it." Jonah spun back, eyes blazing. "You think that changes what I'd done? You think it don't matter now?" She swallowed hard. "It matters more than ever. Because if they catch us, they won't hang me for murder, they'll hang you for protecting me." A silence stretched so long it hurt. Then Jonah holstered his gun, picked up his saddlebag and said, "We keep moving. Silver Bend's the only place we got left." Clara stared at him. "After what I told you, you'd still help me." He didn't look at her. "Ain't about helping anymore. It's about ending this." They rode on through the rising heat, the desert swallowing their trail. Behind them the riders spread like wolves, closing in. As the sun reached its peak, Jonah looked over at her and said quietly, "You tell me something, Claire. When you hit him, when he fell, did it feel like freedom or like sin?" She met his eyes. "Both." He nodded once, slow. "Then we ain't running from the law anymore. We're running from what we both done." By the time they reached Silver Bend, the sun was sinking red behind the mesas, painting the desert like blood. The horses stumbled from exhaustion, their flanks dark with sweat. Dust clung to Jonah's skin, and Clara's face was ghost pale. But neither spoke. They just kept riding toward the one place Jonah believed might still have some justice left in it. But Silver Bend didn't welcome strangers easy. It was a mining town that had burned itself half to death when the silver ran dry. The streets were lined with hollowed-out saloons, sagging porches, and a few stubborn souls who still believed something worth saving lay under that dirt. When they reached the sheriff's office, a narrow building of cracked timber and fading paint, Jonah swung down, scanning the quiet street. Only the wind moved. "Stay close," he told Clara. She nodded, clutching the ledger tight under her shawl. Jonah pushed the door open. Inside, a single lantern burned low. Behind the desk sat Marshal Eli Briggs, a tall man with a silver badge and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Well, I'll be damned," Briggs drawled. "Jonah Carver, thought you swore off trouble." "Did," Jonah said flatly. "Trouble found me anyway." Briggs leaned back, studying him. "And the lady?" "Name's Clara Hollis," Jonah said. "She's under threat. Need a safe place till I can set things right." The marshal's gaze flicked to her, then back to Jonah. "Hollis, you as in Thomas Hollis of Dry Creek?" Clara straightened. "He's dead." Briggs's smile didn't waver. "So I heard. And the town's been screaming murder ever since." "She didn't kill him," Jonah said. "Then why's half of Dry Creek riding this way with torches?" Briggs asked, voice smooth as whiskey. Jonah hesitated. "Because she's got proof their sheriff's dirty and her husband was worse." Briggs's brow arched. "Proof, huh?" Clara stepped forward, holding the ledger. "Names, amounts, deals, everything. My husband used to own that town." The marshal's eyes glinted as he reached for it. "Mind if I take a look?" She hesitated, then handed it over. Briggs flipped a few pages, whistling low. "Well now, ain't this something? Sheriff Dogan, Judge Mallory, even old Carver here." "That's a forgery," Jonah cut in. Briggs chuckled. "Maybe, maybe not. Either way, it's worth a hell of a lot more than the truth." Jonah frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" The marshal shut the book softly, and for the first time his smile vanished. "Means you two just rode into a hornet's. You think Dry Creek's the only town that took Hollis's money? Hell, half the territory's dirty. You hand me this ledger, and I can hang every man in a 50-mile stretch." "Then do it," Clara said. "End it." Briggs leaned forward, elbows on the desk. "Oh, I intend to. But there's the matter of what it's worth to you." Jonah's eyes narrowed. "You lookin' to sell justice, Marshal?" Briggs smiled again, lazy-like. "Ain't that what everybody does?" Outside, thunder of hooves rolled down the main street. Dogan and his... Jonah's hand went to his gun. Briggs didn't move. Now don't do anything foolish. Let me handle this. He stepped to the door as Dugan dismounted. Even Sheriff, he called. Marshal, Dugan said, eyes hard. I'm here for the widow. She's wanted for murder. And that man with her's obstructing the law. Briggs held up a hand. Funny thing, Sheriff. Law says you're wanted too. Dugan stiffened. What are you talking about? Briggs lifted the ledger. Paper trail says you've been on Hollis's payroll for years, taking bribes, covering crimes. Dugan's men shifted nervously. Jonah's voice cut in, sharp. Then arrest him. Briggs turned, eyes cold. I will. Soon as I decide who's paying me more. The realization hit Jonah like a blow. You're no better than he was. Briggs shrugged. Difference is, I'm honest about it. Dugan snarled. You hand over that book, Marshal, or I'll take it off your corpse. Briggs's grin widened. Now we're speaking the same language. Before Jonah could react, gunfire erupted. Dugan's men opened up, bullets shattering the window. Clara screamed and ducked as Jonah pulled her down behind a desk. Briggs dove behind the doorframe, firing back with the precision of a man who'd seen too many gunfights. You just made the worst damn mistake of your life, Sheriff. Outside, chaos reigned, horses reared. Men shouted, the air thick with smoke and dust. Jonah crawled to the back window, saw more riders closing in. They were surrounded. He turned to Clara. We can't stay here. She clutched the ledger. We can't leave it either. Then we take both. He kicked open the back door, dragging her into the alley as bullets whined overhead. The stables were close, 20 yards of open dirt between them and cover. On my count, Jonah said. She nodded, breathing fast. 1, 2, 3. They sprinted. Gunfire tore through the walls. Jonah felt a sting on his shoulder but didn't stop. They dove behind a wagon, panting. Clara's hand came away bloody when she touched his arm. You're hit. Just a graze, he laughed. In the distance more shots echoed. Briggs and Dugan still trading lit in the street. Jonah pointed to the edge of town. We make for the river. If we follow it south, there's a station 3 miles out. But the ledger. He looked at her hard. You still got it. She nodded. Then we ain't losing it. They slipped through the dark alleys, keeping low. Smoke drifted from the saloon, fire catching from stray torches. Silver Bend was turning into another Dry Creek, Law and Greed chewing each other to pieces. As they reached the riverbank, a voice called from behind. Hold it right there. Briggs stood under the moonlight, hat low, gun drawn. His badge gleamed dull in the silver glow. Thought you'd run off with my retirement fund, huh? He said. Clara stepped forward, anger flaring. You said you'd bring justice. He laughed. I am. To myself. Jonah's gun was already in his hand, but Briggs moved faster. The click of his revolver echoed. Don't try it, Carver. I'll drop you before you blink. Jonah met his gaze, calm as stone. You can kill me, Marshal, but she'll burn that book before you touch it. Briggs smirked. Not if I shoot her first. Then a shot rang out, but not his. Briggs staggered, eyes wide, blood blooming on his shirt. He looked down at the hole in his chest, then up at Clara. The little derringer in her hand smoked faintly. He took one step forward, then collapsed in the dust. Clara trembled, lowering the gun. He was gonna. I know, Jonah said quietly, taking the weapon from her hand. But now every lawman in this territory's gonna come for us. She nodded, voice breaking. Then we keep running. Jonah looked down at the dead marshal, then at the ledger still clutched in her hand. No, he said. We stop running. We finished. He took a match from Briggs's pocket, struck it against his boot and held it near the ledger. The flame danced close to the edge of the paper. Clara gasped. Jonah, no. That's our proof. Proof don't matter when the whole world's rotten, he said. All this book does is feed men like him. She stared, torn between fury and heartbreak. Then what do we have left? He looked at her, eyes steady in the flickering light. Each other. That's all there ever was. The flame, the ledger burned bright. Names, lies, all of it curling into ash. The wind took the embers, scattering them over the dark river, until nothing remained. By dawn the desert was quiet again. The ledger was gone, burned to ash and scattered on the wind. Only the memory of it remained, along with the blood on Clara's hands, and the smoke still rising from Silver Bend behind them. Jonah and Clara rode in silence. The horizon ahead was nothing but sand and sun behind them. Lawmen and bounty riders would soon follow, but neither looked back. When the first buildings of Dry Creek appeared in the heat shimmer, Jonah slowed his horse. "You sure about this?" he asked. Clara's eyes were steady. "If we run, it never ends. He built this town on fear. Maybe it's time it burned too." Jonah nodded once. "Then let's finish." They rode straight down the main street. Folks stopped and stared, faces pale, whispers spreading like wildfire. Sheriff Dugan stood on the porch of the jailhouse, bandaged leg, hatred still burning in his eyes. "Well," he said, voice shaking with rage, "look what the desert spit back." Jonah dismounted, every motion calm and deliberate. "You want her, you'll have to take her from me." Dugan sneered. "You think I won't?" He drew, but Jonah was faster. The first shot tore through the silence, echoing across the town. Dugan's gun clattered to the ground, his hand bleeding. Jonah's voice was low. "You'll stand trial for every name in that ledger." Dugan laughed, wild and broken. "That ledger's gone, Carver. You burned the only proof you had." "I don't need paper," Jonah said. "I got witnesses." He looked around at the crowd gathering, men and women who'd watched Clara beaten, who'd cheered once, and now couldn't meet her eyes. "You all knew," Jonah said, voice rising. "You watched him do it, watched him buy this town piece by piece. But the thing about fear is it dies the second someone stands up to it." Silence. Then one man stepped forward, then another. The crowd shifted. Dugan's smirk faded. "You can't stop what's coming, Carver." "Already did," Jonah said. The sheriff lunged for his fallen gun. Jonah fired once more. Dugan hit the dust and didn't rise. Clara stared at the body, then at Jonah. Her eyes shimmered with tears, not of sorrow but release. "What happens now?" He holstered his gun. "Now we live with it." The wind blew down the street, kicking up the dust between them. For the first time, Dry Creek felt quiet, like the land itself had exhaled. Jonah turned to her, hand outstretched. "You coming, Mrs. Carver?" She hesitated, then smiled through her tears. "Yeah," she whispered. "I reckon I am." They walked toward the rising sun, two souls bound, not by the sins behind them, but by the kind of love only born from fire. And behind them, Dry Creek stood still, its ghosts finally at peace.